Hi, my friends. Welcome back to Checkbox Other. I am so happy to be with you today. Oh my goodness, how is your 2020 going? Is it crazy? Is there so much going on? Good, bad, otherwise? Oh my goodness, I just feel like I've been processing and trying to keep up and trying to keep my head above water. And a lot of that water is like all good things, but oh my goodness. And some of it's really, kind of put your head under the pillow. I need a minute to just yell. There's a lot going on this year. And we're only 6 weeks in? I'm just grateful that you're spending your time, your energy, and your attention here because, let's be honest, there's so many places that are trying to grab your attention and grab your patience and your time and your energy, and for you to be spending it here. I hope that we can refill some of your energy cup after you've listened to this incredible episode with Jadah. I'll give you a quick introduction on her in a minute, but I want to hop into a couple updates for you before we dive into the interview. So I've got a couple really exciting things coming up, or really that just happened this past week, to share with you. Two of them have to do with the incredible Marie Forleo. If you don't know who Marie Forleo is, that's okay. You can head on over to the show notes. I'll have a link so you can check her out. She's incredible. She's an entrepreneur who helps train and teach and educate and inspire and motivate and, empower, all the things, entrepreneurs that are trying to create these unconventional, non-traditional businesses in modern times, using the incredible tools we have online, using your unique you to market yourself, and really, really focusing on what makes you a special human being. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, all those things just align so wonderfully to my heart and soul. And one of the things to mention is I took Marie Forleo's B School back in, I think it was, 2013, 2014. And I was still in my full-time job. And at the time, I was really hoping to go and take it to help me with bringing a new perspective on marketing into the mix. Coming out of the election, I was working at BankCap during the election when Mitt Romney was running, and there was a whole lot from a marketing perspective that definitely stretched the role, or what the role had traditionally been. And I was trying to figure out new ways that we could think about marketing. But also in that process, I was surrounded by all these incredible entrepreneurs, and they inspired me, they motivated me, and gave me confidence that I could too start a business one day. And so that started with a food blog. And then that has morphed, that idea, that little spark has morphed into what my business is today. So excited about Marie Forleo and the two things that I've got going on with her, which are just amazing, because my vision board, I think it was back in 2013, had Marie Forleo on it and me meeting her. And so the cool part is, a week and a half or so, I'm going to actually be hanging out with Marie for a little while and sharing my story on a live stream that her team has pulled together, where it'll be me and I believe 7 other entrepreneurs who have gone through Marie Forleo's programs. I believe B School. She also has a program called the Copy Cure that helps with copywriting. And we'll be sitting there and chatting about B School, chatting about our journeys, our businesses, why we're doing these businesses, why these gifts that we have are showing up in the way they are, and how, just this incredible community of human beings has made our journeys so much more fruitful. So I will be posting this, I'm sure, on social medias, but we are going to be doing a live stream on Tuesday, the 18th. And I hope that you're there. I'd love your support. I'd love your eyes, your interest, whatever. If you can't do it live, there will definitely be a recording. And I'd love for you to have a look, give it a like on YouTube if you like, or just, let us know what you think. The other thing that actually released yesterday is a testimonial video that I did because I was selected as one of 24 people out of the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have taken Marie's courses to come in to New York in the fall and really give a story about the power that B School had, but really, again, just be in this incredible arena with these powerhouse, pivotal, transformational entrepreneurs and leaders. And I was just so grateful. I am so grateful for the opportunity to share more about my story, but also to be selected, to be included, and to be surrounded by such incredibly powerful human beings. So again, I will put the link to that 2.5-3 minute video in the show notes so you can have a look, and I'd love to hear what you think about that. Hopefully you enjoy it. Definitely not, again, I know I feel like I'm doing a hard sell for B School. It's just, I don't remember where I was talking about this, but I was talking about how, when you're selling something, I can't sell things I don't really believe in, and I really don't even plan to. I can't stop gushing about it. Ask anybody about how I talk about Costco. Oh my goodness. I won't even go down that road because you're going to be like, I am skipping. So yes, those two things are happening with regard to Marie Forleo. Her new book, Everything is Figure Outable, is pretty incredible too. And then a couple other things. Alt Summit, you guys, if you were of the amazing contingent that went and voted for the panel that we had up for submissions back, I believe in the fall, it's coming to fruition. It's happening the first week of March in Palm Springs, California. If you have been considering or thinking about some event to go to, this seems like the event to go to. I've never been before, but it's going to be me and 3 other amazing podcast guests that you've probably heard. And if you haven't heard, I really, really do recommend for you to take a listen to their episodes. It's going to be me with Kiana, with Jennifer, and with Elizabeth. So I should say Kiana Agbai, Jennifer Brown, and Elizabeth Yalto. I mean, that's a powerhouse lineup. I am just so excited. Just so excited. And then also, I'm going to ask for just a little bit of good vibes to be sent our way. Maybe all of next week would be cool. But if you think about it on Wednesday, send us some good vibes. We got some really exciting stuff going on, and it has the potential to really, really, really kind of slingshot this business forward in a way that we can serve so many more people. And so I'm just so freaking excited about that. Okay, so let me dive into the amazing, amazing, amazing human being we have today. My friends, I'm excited to introduce you to Jadah Sellner, who, as you'll hear in the beginning of the episode, I just met when we started talking. Jadah is the host of the Lead with Love podcast. She's a TEDx speaker and the creator of Love Over Metrics. It's a business growth incubator, and it's all about embracing love as part of the process of growing your business. I mean, Jadah talks more about it in here, but so amazing. She's also the best-selling author and co-founder of Simple Green Smoothies. We have a whole conversation in here about how her and her co-founder grew this incredible community through Simple Green Smoothies and their whole take on customer care and the customer conversation and community building. It's next level. I'm so excited for you to hear it. She is a serial entrepreneur, an online growth strategist, and a business mentor who consults with companies and personal brands to build communities with love, service, and impact. I mean, don't you want to just hang out with her? I will say this episode is like a coaching session in a great way. It gives you all these different ways to think about trials and tribulations and excitement and preparation and being uniquely you and your learning style in a way that I don't know that we've talked fully about before. We talk about boundaries, we talk about grief. We talk about so many incredible things. Like, one of my favorite parts of this that I geeked out hard listening to the playback of the interview was this concept of creative simmering and this idea that we have to be patient and give ourselves some room and some space for great things to come about. We talk about an intentional pause in life in the midst of kind of burnout culture and hustle, and the importance of what it is to really listen to your body and know what you need through that. Jadah talks a lot about hiring when we start talking more about kind of Simple Green Smoothies and their incredible growth that they had and how they supported a really, really active and deeply connected community. And she talks a lot about connection. She talks a lot about love and how love plays itself out in so many amazing ways, and that love is a choice each and every day with all of your interactions, that you can choose love. And I just love what she talks about here in this episode. So before I give everything away, I'll stop so we can have a conversation with Jadah. Again, make sure you check out the show notes page where we'll have all the links that we talk about in the episode there. And if you like this episode, I'd love for you to rate and review us. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it's a very easy way to do that. It shows up, I think, everywhere. And if you're not, and there is no way to rate and review, please do head on over to join the conversation link on our website. So if you go to nikkyinnocent.com/podcast, you scroll a little bit down the screen, there's a button that says, or a link that says join the conversation. You click in there and you can give us any kind of feedback you want. You can suggest topics, you can suggest speakers, you can ask questions, you can share your story of times you felt other. You can do whatever you want there. We'd love to hear from you. Again, we appreciate so much having more of a two-way conversation with our listeners. We appreciate so much your ears, but we also want to hear your voice. So please don't hesitate. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to Jadah. Hello, Jadah. Welcome to Checkbox Other.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, Nikki.
I am so excited and honored. So, listeners, Jadah and I just met. We were connected through Elizabeth D'Alto, who was a previous guest on the podcast. And anybody that comes through her recommendation just means so much to me. I can, as she'd be so proud, feel it in my body when I get a referral from her, and I then start to dive into the incredible work that they're doing and the things that they're putting out into the world, and just feel like, oh, we were meant to know each other. And Jadah was one of those people. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yay.
So the first thing I have people do when they're here is to just give a quick introduction of who you are, your journey, any kind of pivots or aha moments in your life that have led you to where you are today and what you're doing today.
Well, there have been many pivots. So I'll try to be quick, but I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now. And my daughter was just 18 months old when I started my first brick and mortar business in Kauai. My husband and I, we moved to Kauai the year 2008, which is also when the economy crashed. So we moved from Los Angeles to Kauai. My husband was in a rock band. We were both theater performers. And so we were creative artists moving to Kauai during the economy crash. And, I was like, you got to get a real job and take care of this baby that we made together. So he got his real estate license. He was going to get into vacation timeshare sales, and nobody was hiring at that time. And my husband presents very young. So they definitely weren't hiring young, inexperienced salespeople. So you only really have two options when you're living on an island: to either get into the tourism industry, but when the economy crashes, there's nothing, or you start your own company. So we kind of depleted our savings, and I was just in my ideation brain trying to figure out, how am I going to provide for our family? And I knew that I wanted to start something where I could have my daughter by our side. And so we started a brick and mortar business called Little Sprouts Playhouse, which is where it was a play and learning center for kids. And, I had a mom's group called Ohana Mamas, which was created from this need of connection, feeling so isolated in an island that we actually had never visited before. So sight unseen. Wow. And from there, I just came up with the solution of creating a safe place for kids to play, where you didn't have to say no to them, because my daughter was a toddler. So I was saying no, don't touch that. Don't pull those books off the bookshelf. And so just having that safe place. And so that's where that business started. And that's kind of where the entrepreneurial bug really came into fruition, where everything before that were domains purchased, logos created, but never actually started a business. And the first pivot that I made was in us actually closing and liquidating all of our assets at that business, just because we realized it wasn't aligned with how we wanted to serve. We actually had to pivot our offer that we first started with. And what we learned is that parents don't want to pay to stay and play with their kids, which was our original vision, but they actually want to pay, go away, and you play with their kids. And so we did pivot to what the marketplace wanted and was willing to pay for. But in doing that, we realized that that was not what was making our heart sing. And so even though it was bringing in money, it wasn't the way that we wanted to show up on a day-to-day basis. And so we closed the business down, $42,000 in credit card debt, and moved from Kauai to my in-laws' house for 6 months. So that was really a huge initiation and a little bit of an ego blow, going from tropical island to, hey, I'll just live with my in-laws, with my kid and my husband, and trying to figure out our next steps. And in that season of uncertainty, that's when I got into building an online business. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But I know you said to keep it short. So that was one of my first pivots in my entrepreneurial journey. And then growing businesses online, which is, what I support people with today.
Ooh, so many questions. I feel like I'm like, keep going, keep going. No, we'll get to it. So one of the questions I feel like I need to ask is, when you made that leap to move to a place you'd never been before, what motivated that? How did that feel? What did that feel like? I know you mentioned a bit of creating community with Ohana Mamas and really connecting with your community that way. What was that experience like?
For me, I always feel like I'm a child of the world, but also feeling like don't belong anywhere. So I was born in Sacramento, lived in Northern California Bay Area, which is where I live now. But then went to middle school in Miami, high school in Las Vegas. My college, I'm putting quotes around that because I was on the 10-year college plan and I do not have a college degree, but lived in LA during those years. And then when we had our daughter, that was really the big motivation. My mom, my bonus dad, and my little brother had moved to the Big Island, and I just had this strong instinct to be close to my mom during the season of being initiated as a mother. And so that was really a big call for me. And also, my husband and I were both actors, and I just felt like we were working for a theater program, educational theater program through Kaiser Permanente. And I was just like, I think you're going to outgrow this role, because we were playing like middle school kids and high school kids, like in our 20s and 30s. And I was just like, I don't think this is going to take care of our baby like forever. So that was like a really big motivation of like, we need to do something different, that we can't keep doing what we're doing right now to sustain our lives. So I'm one of my top strengths finders is futuristic. So I'm always looking ahead of like being a few steps ahead. And so that was really the draw. And it was a hard leap to make, to go from like creative artist living in LA to then moving to a pretty, like Hawaii is the most isolated body of land in the world. Like it's the furthest away from anything. So it was a really big leap, especially for my husband, because he had only lived in California. And so yeah, for me, I get excited about change. Like I love shaking things up. So that was exciting. It allowed me to put my problem solving hat of getting resourceful. And so yeah, I love sitting in that season of uncertainty and unknown. It's actually really fun for me. I don't think it was as fun for my husband, who's like, I got to provide for my family and make sure they eat. But yeah, but it was exciting. And also it was hard, because it was like, oh, our original plan in moving here was so you could get a real estate license and I could stay home with the kid. And so that didn't happen. So that was hard, and trying to figure out, well, like, how are we going to make money and survive?
Yeah. And it's in those moments you kind of wish you had the ability to fast forward and see those few years ahead, to look back and be like, oh, okay. I'm sure in that moment there was of the 2008 crash, where none of us felt like we had any control over what was going on or what might be there tomorrow. Just being able to be present in the moment, which I know you talk about, and also hold on for what will be the ride to come.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things with a podcast called Checkbox Other, one of my first questions, one of my favorite questions, is asking people to share a time or two, if one feels insufficient, when they felt other in their life. So I'd love to hear from you about that.
Yeah. So for me, I recently did my 23andMe, and I cover all the continents but Australia. And so my father, he recently passed away, but he's African American. And what I realized in the 23andMe, he's also got some Spanish in him. My mother is half Chinese, half white. And I always presented like, like where we would live, I was always hanging out with the Latino kids. So I always felt this feeling of like, I'm not Black enough to hang out with the Black kids. I'm not white enough to hang out with the white kids. So always trying to find my landing in that place of like, who am I? And I remember a really strong pull to always wanting to be around my father and like, look, no, for real, I'm Black, look. So also that feeling of when I'm feeling other, to also feel this sense of like having to prove who I am, or that I belong in that space. So that was always a challenge growing up. So obviously the the void creates the value, right? So the void of feeling like I'm an outsider looking in, or feeling like a chameleon and I can adapt, and I would have little Latino accents when I was like in Miami, and like learning some Portuguese and all of these things, like just trying to find my place. That as I became an adult, I did not want people to feel like they were on the outside. And so that's why business for me is such a vehicle for belonging and connection and love, and for people to feel seen and heard and accepted just as they are. So that was actually one of the reasons when I started my mom's group in Kauai, was breeded from, I went to a mom's group, and everyone was already cliquey. They already knew each other. So I'm this new girl on a new island with a toddler, and just trying to like find some friends. And like when you're in that new space where everyone already knows each other and no one's like welcoming you in. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to make friends, I think that's one thing that I'm really good at, is like, if I'm lacking something, I'm going to get resourceful about it, and I'm going to create an opportunity so I don't feel that lack. And so I was like, all right, meetup.com. I'm going to start a mom's group, and I'm going to make every single person that comes to the play date, the park, whatever, feel welcome. And in the beginning, it was only like one person that would come, and I'm like, they're going to feel so loved, so appreciated. We're going to have a really deep conversation. And that group ended up growing to hundreds. And even when I left the island, the group was still going on. So really, that would be an example of feeling other and creating, a valuable experience and connection from that place.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so funny. I shot you an email before this because when I was going through all the incredible stuff that you put out into the world and publicly people can see, I felt so tied in some way to a lot of the messages and the experiences you were talking about in life, and feeling like, oh my goodness, was she there with me? In these moments, I'm already getting a little tingle in my nose that I might tear up. But in these moments in my life where I felt like I wasn't enough on, I would say, either side of the aisle, but there was more than just two. And that experience of feeling like I've got to create the space, I've got to be a chameleon, and I've got to figure out a way to find where I belong, even if it's me making that space for myself. And I really, really love just even reflecting on your journey and the success that you have based on really that void and value dynamic that you mentioned, on the fact that like, maybe I didn't have a community right away, but I know how to build community. And maybe I couldn't understand exactly where I was supposed to fit or what role I was supposed to play, but I can absorb this from the environment around me and understand and try these things out and play these different roles. And as an actress, I'm sure you were incredible, because there's so much of us as when we don't fit into a specific box, we have to try to find our footing in that way. So it's just, even just listening to your story just feels so close to my heart and my soul. And so thank you for sharing it. But I also think that there's so much of how you mentioned your business and your purpose and the places that you've brought your gifts to the world have just been so wonderfully aligned to that experience that you've had since kind of day one, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So your TED Talk, it was just truly wonderful. And you talk about one of the lines that I was listening. I'm a big listener, and I watch too, but I'm a big listener to things, which podcasting was a wonderful draw that way. But one of the lines that you said and made me run back to my computer and go back and listen to it again was about communities, building communities that stand with people and not creating platforms to stand above them. There is something just so truly beautiful about this, especially as we're in this digital space where there's a lot of brand recognition, name recognition, brand building, and creating community around a persona or a service or an offering, where we say community and we say groups and we say these things, but a lot of times they're just marketing lingo for creating kind of conversion funnels in some way, shape, or form. I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of your take on community. I know you talk a lot about transactional versus transformational relationships as well when you're thinking about community building relative to creating platforms that bring people together.
Yeah, I love that you highlighted that sometimes we can use community as a marketing tool or strategy. So I think it's, with a company that I co-founded in 2012 with my friend and business partner Jen Hansard, which 3 years ago I actually sold and exited that company so that I could do the work that I'm doing today and coaching and supporting women business leaders and founders. But, we grew a community online to over 400,000 followers on Instagram, over 300,000 Facebook fans, 355,000 email subscribers, and we could say like, oh, it's a marketing strategy, or that like, yes, and we're able to build a business of multiple 6 figures, 7 figures in being able to reach that community. But I think that something that a lot of people do is they just look at it from a numbers perspective. Like I'm only looking to have buyers on my list. I'm only looking to have, if they're not going to buy my product in the next 90 days, then I'm going to delete them, right? We talk about like list cleaning and all of these things. And what I want is for people to remember that there are beating hearts behind those numbers, and like to really look at the humanity in business. So I look at business as a vehicle to express my highest value, which is love. And I think community is an expression of love. And so what I do inside business is allow myself the opportunity and my team the opportunity to love up on people and make them feel like they matter and that they're seen. And so that's what, one of the policies that I started was no comment left behind. And to really just acknowledge people that they took the time to comment on your social media page, and like that you don't just leave them hanging, that you actually have a real conversation. So for every like touch point, I'm really connecting to the human on the other end. Yes, I'm growing a business. Yes, I'm super strategic and I know how to make money, but when I'm connecting with people, I'm really connecting with the humanity on the other side. And I think that that could actually be something that makes you stand out online. Like you'll think about the companies that actually make you feel like you matter. Like, oh my gosh, they really saw me. I just think there's so many opportunities for us to have these small interactions to connect with humans, because that's all we're so hungry for. Like I love when I Oprah binge. Anytime I'm feeling stuck or lost, I'm like, what Oprah interview can I watch or listen to today? But she was just talking about even like the most famous people are always like, how'd I do? At the end of those conversations. And I think that's how we're walking in the world. And I just want people to walk in the world where they don't feel like they have to do this life alone. And so to me, I use business as a tool to make people feel like they're not alone, and I can still make a living from that process too.
That's beautiful. One question, that is like jumping in the back of my head was, you mentioned 400,000 followers on Instagram. How do you handle sheer numbers of comments in that same way? Because I get this sense from you that it's not just a, hey, thanks. And then it's like, it sounds as though you're going deep with people that are bringing their deep comments to you. How did you handle kind of capacity and even just figuring out the process with which you could do that to handle that volume?
Yeah, so I really believe in like sustainable leadership and doing things like I, say with all my teams, whatever business I'm running, is like burnout is not an option. But also connection is a high priority. So you hire more humans to work in your business. Like that is the beauty of business, is like I always say that you can't outsource connection or automate authenticity. So instead of having bots and all of these things, and I've played and experimented with bots, and I'm like, oh no, I don't like it. And now bot people and spam people are responding to me. Turn it off. Like, anytime I feel the disconnect, I have to release it. And not to say that it doesn't work, because it works amazing for other people's companies. But for the way that I do business and what's aligned with my values, it just doesn't work. But I try stuff on because I'm a business owner and I'm a strategist. So I love to try that on. But we just hired people like us to continue those conversations and connections. So when we got to capacity of responding to every comment, I remember our first 30-day green smoothie challenge, we grew our email list from 2,000 subscribers to 30,000 subscribers in one challenge that we launched.
Wow.
And, I was the one responding to all the comments. And then I was like, I can't do it. Like, we need more help. And so actually, my business partner, her husband, was helping us respond to comments because I was just such a strong advocate that everyone needs to be seen. Everyone needs to be acknowledged. Everyone needs to feel that connection from us that we actually care, that you're not just a number, that you're not just a transaction to us, that we actually hear you, we see you, we feel you, and we acknowledge you. So once we did that, then we hired our first part-time virtual assistant who then turned into our project manager and grew up on our team. But we knew that we wanted to keep that humanity and that connection inside the business. So when you are at capacity, when you are feeling like I don't have enough time to do the things that make people feel like they matter, you hire someone to love up on those people. I always ask, companies that I consult with, like, do you have a love bug on your team? Because because there's certain people who are like, I don't want to do that. I just want to get to business. I'm like, but you have to have people who care. You need the EQ, the emotional intelligence on your team. You need people who have the empathy, that have the patience for communication and connection. Like businesses who just run like go, go, go and don't have anyone who anyone that cares about human connection, you're going to have a high turnover in your business,
right?
As people,
and no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're hoping a human being is maybe the person pressing go or interacting with something in some aspect of your business.
Yeah. So I love people who are customer support, virtual assistant, executive assistants, because they are the front of the line of like human connection and contact. And I take such good care of my team when they are the people that have to interact with my clients and my customers. So it's like, if I'm no longer loving up and doing no comment left behind, I have a team who's now doing what I used to do, then I'm reallocating that love and attention into the team. So we just shift where the love goes as your business grows.
I love that. And it's contagious and then also exponential in that process. That's beautiful. Wow. You mentioned love a lot. And so I want to make sure that, first of all, we talk about your business and the work that you do. And I know two big things that you do have the word love right in them. It's amazing. You've got love over metrics and leading with love. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how love specifically, especially in a country that I think has a very difficult time right now with embracing love as the powerhouse that it is and can be, how you've leveraged love to kind of overcome the fear and the shame and the scarcity that tends to be, especially in the business world, a prevalent reaction or a place to kind of anchor back into when change feels scary. I'd love to hear a little bit about how love has shifted maybe people that have come to the table with fear, shame, scarcity, guilt, all that stuff, and how you think about that, especially, one of the things that came up almost immediately was the reaction that people had to Marianne Williamson in the presidential debates. Whether you support her or not, whether you're Democrat, Republican, doesn't really matter in this context here. It's, the reaction people had to her standing on this stage and talking about the value of peace and of love, and the reaction of a lot of our media outlets. And, I remember working in a space and there was a group of people sitting behind me and talking about how frivolous and silly she was because she was talking about this whole idea of us treating each other wonderfully. I'm so drawn to the idea of the power of love, but how much of a challenge it is in everyday practice when there are so many forces at play to kind of keep us in this unloving place.
Yeah. For me, like I have a tattoo on my arm that says choose love. So for me, it's a way of being in the world. It's a choice. I actually remember my husband when we were first dating. We've been married for 14 years. And he's like, I choose to love you. Like, I'm not in love with you. I choose to love you. And I was like, what? I was like, no, you need to be in love with me. And like it, in that moment, I was super triggered and annoyed and like, that's stupid. But being married for 14 years, I totally get it that it is a choice to like choose into love. And for me, I choose to lead with love in my business and my life by example. So I always say I'm not here to convert the unconverted. And there's other people who may want to take on that role. Like I think we also have to find where our roles are, like what role do we want to play? How do we want to contribute to the world? And for me, it's to lead by example and to call the ones in who get it and to just amplify our voices. So that's why, with my Love Over Metrics incubator, where I coach and mentor women in growing their businesses and not compromising their health, their relationships in the process, and to do it from a loving place, that I'm uplifting those voices and showing what's possible, that you can love what you do, that you can love your team, your community, your customers, love yourself in the process, and have a profitable, sustainable and meaningful business at the same time. So for me, my mission, like before I was able to reach 1 million followers, through Simple Green Smoothies. And now my impact, I want it to be more of a ripple effect impact. So I want to impact 1 million people by helping 1,000 women reach at least their 1,000 true fans. And then we create that 1 million person impact together. I say, making a bigger impact together. Like that's what I lean into. So I don't try to convert the unconverted. I have definitely felt on the outside when people are like, "Oh, heart-centered." I don't like that, and I don't even use the word heart-centered because I believe we all have hearts.
I hope so, right?
Right. But it's just the reflection that I get back from people, right?
Yeah.
But I that's when I feel other too, because I'm like, oh, I'm just not driven by the numbers. Like,
Yes.
I'm just driven by connection. I'm driven by collaboration and community and creativity. And so that's how I move through the world, is not to convert, but to connect to the others that connect with that message, and then amplify and uplift and elevate those voices so that more of us are heard, and we can see that that is another way. It's another option. So I want to make the people who feel like, ooh, being love, is that a little woo? Is that a little like that doesn't make sense, doesn't make sense on paper? I want to give them permission that you can be and build something meaningful just the way you are, that you don't have to mold to the way where other people might be operating from a place of fear and scarcity. So that's how I do it. My husband, it's funny. It's love all in our family, but he has a music program called One Heart Music, and he teaches early childhood education to kids 5 and under, making music with their families. And for him, instead of getting caught in the news and all of that, of like, and feeling that despair, he's like, how I'm going to solve that problem is I'm just going to create more love in the world. Like every class that I teach, like I feel like he's just like, I feel like it's church to me. Like I am moving the room. I'm bringing more love and joy into the room. So it's like we're expanding love so that we can kind of push out the hate and the disconnection and the separation and the scarcity and the fear from that place. So that's our way of bringing more love into the world, is to choose love and to lead with love, which is the name of my podcast.
Yes. So the love over metrics thing, it's so funny. Right before we started recording, I was on a call and I was trying to explain to somebody about the way I think about and structure my business. So my background is in corporate, but very specifically in financial services, investment management, private equity. And so very, very, very focused on metrics. When you're saying love over metrics, that's, where the cerebral or academic part of my brain was groomed, and my body and soul, I kind of abandoned those to focus on the metrics piece and understanding, oh, that's where value lives. But the more I've stepped into kind of my own space, I've given room back for the body and the soul piece that has always been somebody that is so focused on belonging, is always making sure, in the same way you were saying, that nobody feels left out, because I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like to not know where I fit, where I belong. Am I allowed here? And for people that are so used to having conversation around value equating to dollar signs or whatever financial metric that is. It's a safe and detached way to kind of give value to life. That transition of saying, yeah, you know what, we do need financial support to exist in this world right now. That's how it's set up for you to have a roof over your head. But it doesn't need to be the be all end all first choice or first determining factor in everything that you do. And I, again, saying this from a lot of the spaces that I was in where, the bottom line was the most important. And, the soft or warmer skills, yeah, those are nice to have, but that's for later in the process when we're determining, after we understand that, the hard or the more analytical skills are there. So I think it's really interesting when you're talking about, and I know in your TED Talk, you also mentioned a couple of companies that really focus on having that love bug or that heartbeat in what they do, and how that actually, when you focus there, it actually transforms into those returns at the same time. So it's not that they're mutually exclusive, that in order to lead from love, you have to abandon metrics and you have to abandon kind of that more analytical, concrete, monetary focus on value. But it means that if you lead here, that will come.
Yeah, and I think there's no wrong or right way, because we all have different drivers and motivators. So if someone is more motivated by metrics and deadlines, and that gets them to take action to do more meaningful work in the world, then that's amazing. And I think that they can also coexist, because I'm a big dreamer, but I also have to be an activator and take action on my ideas too. So I can do both. We just often tend to lean on one side more naturally, but I think that we can integrate all of it. Like I have, calls with my bookkeepers, and I feel so loved by them. I hate looking at my profit and loss statements by myself, but when I'm with my bookkeepers, they have so much compassion and patience that I don't love the numbers, but we're actually having conversation and we're laughing and we're strategizing. So yes, numbers totally matter, especially when you are growing a business. So I love that you said that it's not like mutually exclusive. Like we don't need to exclude one, right. Like one can only exist. Like they both can be integrated and exist together. And I think that's the sweet spot of also humanity. It's like we all need each other. Like we're an ecosystem, and like someone who's more doer than dreamer, like can support that person that has those bigger ideas and pulling them to the ground. So I think that's where we can like bridge the dynamic differences to coexist together.
I need to take a minute. I feel like I'm trying to soak all that in. That's yes. And I think that there is this idea in this world right now that you have to have the right answer. So I love so much that you said there's not one way, there's not one right way. Everybody has different levels of all different things in their lives, and they have something to bring to the party. I think that is a really important thing to remember as you're trying to find your footings of like listening to something like this and being like, am I a lover or am I somebody that loves numbers? It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it also doesn't have to be that you are one of those things at all times. You can lean more into your dreamer or doer self too, to move yourself forward. So one of the things that I really appreciated, and it's actually come up a bunch of times in the podcast with the various guests, is how you talked about handling grief and handling loss. And you talked very specifically about an intentional pause. And, I think specifically in the world we live in right now with our burnout culture, which you talked about before, that burnout's not an option, and this hustle culture, that a lot of times when we experience a loss or grief in our lives, we have a finite amount of days allotted in company policies for, bereavement leave. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from you about how the intentional pause shaped your path and how important the intentional pause can be, especially in the face of something like grief and loss.
Yeah. So for me, I think this is really tuning into your body, your needs, your capacity, your energy levels. And I know that not everyone has this privilege. So I think, me choosing the path the risky path of entrepreneurship, because it's not easy. And I know people try to make it seem super sexy. It's just a path that works really well for me, but it gives me the flexibility to create that intentional pause in my business, to slow things down. So, my father passed away in the summer, and I was recording my podcast through the summer. It's also my very play season as well, where I travel a lot with my family. And I was actually inspired by Elizabeth D'Alto. She's like, I'm doing a little experiment, and I'm just not going to publish any new podcasts over the summer. I was like, that's a great idea. I could do that. This is my podcast. This is my business. And, I actually had podcasts that were already recorded, but I really didn't have the capacity to show up in the way that I wanted to. And, I also was doing a lot of deep inner work with my therapist and processing all of those pieces. And I just needed to give myself space. And so I had a conversation with my team and with my podcast editor that we're going to take a pause and we're going to reset in September. And I think that's a part of really communicating your boundaries and your needs, is to have conversations with people who might be affected by those, an intentional pause of some sort, and just making sure that one, these are my needs that I want right now, and also making sure that everyone is on the same page. So that felt really good for me to also connect with my podcast editor and my team were just like, yeah, that seems right. And now I have all these episodes that are batched for the fall and my favorite time of the year, when connect. I love fall so much, just all the holidays. It just makes me so excited, and that I get to have those in the can, ready to go. So something that my life coach, Rebecca McLaughlin, talks about, and she's a resident life coach inside my group program, but she's coined this term, big energy women. And so big energy women, we have big ideas. We're super creative. We have this outburst of projects where we do go all in into actually a little bit of this hustle energy of focus of output. And then we have a crash where we're whew, that was a lot. And I just need to pause. I need to Netflix. I need to massage, whatever it is, slow it down. So not to shame ourselves when we have big outburst energy, and then we need to kind of recoil and reset ourselves. And then there's also this simmering, which can be very uncomfortable for big energy women, because we always have ideas kind of brewing in our brain. But there's also the simmering where you're I feel like I did nothing today. I feel like I've done nothing for the past week. You feel like you're not actually moving a project forward, but there's actually this creative simmering that is happening for us, that we're thinking about it. It's just not been actualized and it's not concrete yet. But that's part of the work that I think that we ignore often, is the creative thinking work that's happening inside that nobody can see yet. And then when that timer comes, right, where it's okay, it's due tomorrow, everything just outpours. But it's where did that come from? Oh, it came from all that simmering where you were I'm not doing anything, I'm not being productive. You were taking everything in and you were integrating it into yourself, so that when it was time to create, the work comes again, the output, that outburst.
Well, I can see how you transform people's lives, because right now, I kind of wish my coach were here right now, because we've been talking a lot about this idea of expansion and contraction. And I think the addition of the idea of simmering is something that is a little bit mind-blowing for me right now. So thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things I was so eager to talk to you about, because in one of the podcast episodes, I heard you speaking about your process for how you bring that creative energy to life, and how it looks different the way that you do it than people expect sometimes. And the way I think about it from my own personal experience is, I don't know if you watched the Beyonce Homecoming on Netflix, where you got to have a front row seat to all the incredibly meticulous work she had in the practicing, and just the toll on her body and mind, and the team that was there, and so much went into it. And you just saw how much prep and practice was visible. And over and over and over again and meticulous. And I sat there and I remember, everyone's reaction to it was like, wow, that's how you're powerful. And I was like, I don't do that outwardly. I'm not somebody that, so for instance, for my TED Talk, I had 2 in a month, which was, again, I learned from that's too much, way too much, 2 in 2 weeks is too much. But the way I do this is I do sit there and it looks like I'm doing nothing. It looks like I'm watching Netflix. It looks like I'm watching TV. It looks like I'm just listening to books and I'm not doing much. But when the time comes, I know what I'm doing. I know I can go through my talk 2 or 3 times and here I am. And the first time around when I did my TED Talk, we actually had a speaking coach that the TED team had you work with. And they had very specific rules of how you were going to come with your first draft of your talk, and you were going to give your talk, and you were going to get notes, and then you were going to get your breaths in a certain place and the commas in the right place, and when you changed your slides and all that, which again, I think it felt very much like a very overtly documented process, and it felt really uncomfortable for me. I did it, but it felt very uncomfortable. And the second opportunity, so the second go around 2 weeks later, gave me the opportunity to be like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just going to trust my body. And I guess, thank you for the word simmer. Let myself simmer to really understand what I want to put out in the world for this talk. And I want to feel less robotic. Not that the delivery was robotic, the delivery was fine, but just the experience internally was such a much more natural one to give myself the freedom to do things my own way. And so I'd love to hear, I know you mentioned one of your big keynotes, you had this process of really embracing your prep and your simmering time.
Yeah, such a good question. And I definitely watched Beyonce's Homecoming. Actually, a lot of my local clients from my group coaching program, we all like got together at one of their houses. That's where like I love Up on My People, where I invite my clients or past clients to my dance classes. We go hiking. Like I just love the people that I get to serve and connect with. So yeah, I totally watched that and I was like, that girl hustles. She like gets it in. And yeah, that we all have different creative ways of getting our work out in the world. And mine is definitely more internal. And I freak my husband out all the time because he's like, I don't see you practicing. So it is for me, and I don't do like rehearse in front of a group of friends or, all the things that like the speaking things say that you should do. I do really just like it's like collecting that information and listening to a podcast that inspires me or validates an idea that I am already thinking about. So yeah, I wait. I wait to the last minute, and I like for me, it's like I'm practicing like the day before, and I'm probably only practicing like my opening and my close, and I trust that like I know my stories. I know my content. Like I've taught this, and I just get in such a flow state when I speak on stage, and I really just like harness that. I get nervous about an hour before I speak. So I'm not nervous before that whole procrastination process. It's really wild, but I'm not. It's like I'm just nervous that hour before. And to me, I let that like nervous energy in my belly, like the butterflies in my stomach, or I have to go pee like a million times. Like it just lets me know like, oh, I'm getting ready and I'm going to pour that energy like into the audience, like all of that is like bubbling up inside of me. And I also remind myself like, oh, I'm nervous because that means that I care, that I really care. And I also try to think about who's that one person that I can connect and help. So I don't try to serve everybody in the room. I just like, if I can, my story from beginning to end can help one person, transform one person's life, then that's enough. Then I can release some of the people pleasing that comes up with that planning and preparing process of that. I don't have to make everyone in this room like me or love me. That piece really lets me off the hook around that. But yeah, I'm very last minute, like as far as external, I might write something, or I look at my slides that like 24 hours before. But I just allow that space to be the simmering part and the creative and gathering. And like right now, I'm writing my second book. And I took an intentional pause over the summer with my book as well, because I felt like I was living my book. Like I was like, oh, there's a whole nother layer to this book where I was actually feeling stuck. And I'm like, now it all makes sense, from this loss, from this grief, that I have an even deeper, more embodied connection to what I'm writing about in the book. So sometimes when the creative output isn't happening, I also feel that it's like an invitation that there's an initiation in your life that hasn't quite happened, that you quite haven't lived and really deeply felt to communicate about it yet. And so to be patient when it's like not all figured out yet, I think is really important. It's something I just talked about in my group coaching call today. It was like, you're going to try some stuff on and you're in the testing phase right now and you don't even know if you're going to like it yet. So like let's not fast forward too fast. I think we want all of the answers and we want everything polished so quickly that then we bypass the actual deep learning experience of trusting ourselves and building that inner confidence and resilience.
And even compassion. I think that's a part of one of the things that you mentioned early had me writing compassion on here. This idea of knowing that not only for people pleasers, I think we do a great job, or people that have battled with people pleasing tendencies. I don't want to put labels on people. Yeah. To be really aware of compassion for others, but not necessarily afford ourselves that same generosity and grace. And in those moments of time where we're not getting right to the right answer, giving ourselves the understanding we really are doing the best we can. And maybe that is that we have to wait for something else to come into our world. Maybe that is really that we have to let whatever needs to settle in our lives to show itself. One of the beautiful things, I don't know, that the Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, I thought was really interesting. And she talks about kind of the creative process. And I feel like it's tying into a couple things that you said of your husband talking about his work being his own kind of church and a spiritual experience where there's going to be so much that can come into that room each day and you don't know exactly what it's going to be, but you're creating a space for love. This idea that if you stop and slow down, the world will offer you what you need to create that creative force. And in that book, it is really interesting. One of the stories she talks about is that she had this idea for a book and wrote it down and started writing it down and stopped and kind of lost it and lost the momentum of it. And then Ann Patchett wrote it, almost word for word, the book later, not word for word, but it's very, very similar story later. And this idea that the inspiration will hit you and it needs to hit you and you can get it out of your body as much as you're able. And you are, instead of being responsible for wrestling it out, allowing yourself to be kind of the vehicle for when it's meant to be, it'll be and come through you the way it's meant to. And giving yourself that freedom and that really all I got to do here is show up and be as authentically myself as I can be without beating myself up that I haven't finished it yet. Because we're in this instant gratification culture where we think we should be able to do things in 15 minutes flat. And if we can't, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And that's something that I say is don't put a timeline on your dreams. Mm-hmm. We can put a timeline on our actions, but, if we don't achieve a certain goal in a certain amount of time, it doesn't mean to lower your ambition. It just means like extend the timeline. And so I'm just an advocate of giving ourselves permission to build slowly, to allow that simmering to happen. And when the time is right, it will come. But yeah, we have to trust ourselves. We have to trust the process so deeply. And I completely agree with the compassion piece, which is why I think community matters so much, because sometimes we just need someone on the outside to remind us to love ourselves just as much as we love others.
So one of the last things, and it's because it's something I've been focusing so much on, but you mentioned boundaries. And I'd love to hear kind of your take on boundaries and how you process mine is a lot around my people pleasing tendencies. So how you kind of process boundaries and how they've helped you in life.
Yeah, so for me, I think boundaries are an act of self-love, of self-care, right? Of like taking care of us. And I love that quote where they say you can't pour from an empty cup. So
Yes.
I'm such a naturally energetic person, like energy, like I feel energy. And it's funny because I've never read like any manifestation books or like I'm not really like people might think I'm like extra woo, but I always like I'm actually really new to woo and I don't really
Hmm.
understand all of those stuffs, but I feel energy. Like I feel energy in people and I feel it in myself. And so I for me boundaries is being aware of my energy and my reserves of what is draining that life force in me and what gives me energy. So I'm like a mad scientist of my own life, of how I am in the world. And so I document stuff. Like I document when I have like a dream week and I'm like, well, why was that so dreamy? What did I love so much about that? And so I'm always looking at like double down on what's working and stop what's not. And so to me, boundaries is like it's a constant practice of just tuning into what is working in your life and what's not working and how might you do something different the next time it happens because I I think some people can also interpret boundaries meaning that you always have them in place, but
Yeah.
sometimes we don't know our boundaries until it's actually been violated.
Yes.
So this could be in the same of like having team. I think this is such an interesting process that people get really triggered when like someone like doesn't do something the way that you wanted them to do it, but I'm like, but you didn't know what you wanted. And so it's really important for us to like also see that everyone is our teacher of teaching us about our boundaries because sometimes we just don't know them until they're violated. And then once they are, it's okay that they were violated, but moving forward, now you know that that doesn't work for you and you're able to communicate that out loud. So anytime someone like triggers something in me or violates a boundary that I actually didn't know that I had, but I'm like, oh, thank you. Like that was a gift. You are a gift. Even if it was an employee that like's not a good fit, I'm like, you are such a gift or a client that's not a fit for me, right? Of
Mm.
like, that was really draining but you were a gift to give me more clarity on what works for me and what doesn't. So then next time around, when I'm calling out clients or when I'm interviewing someone or I'm hiring someone to be on my team, now I have extra layers of questions, of clarities to protect the boundaries that I now have in place that I didn't know existed before.
Oh, well, I love this. Double down on what's good, release what's not. You just gave me so, first of all, thank you. I feel like you've given all of us so many things to walk away with this from. I feel like we all owe you for a coaching session at this point. My goodness. So, I think as we're closing this out, one of the things that you mentioned up front was being kind of a lifelong learner. And you just referenced using experiences in your life as like data points to really get to know yourself. What do you feel like has been a really transformative learning experience for you that you kind of wish, whether it be the exact experience or just the transformation process itself, more people would have exposure to?
Hmm. So I'm always learning. So, being a lifelong learner for me, I think it's an embodied practice. So I look at it in three phases of education, right? Where we're kind of consuming and taking information in. And then I look at us experimenting, where we actually get in the game and like play on the field, right? Where
Yeah.
we're it's another layer of learning, but now we're like doing it, but we're doing it really messy and sloppy and like not really sure what we're doing. And then the last layer is embodied learning, where it's like I have the information, I lived it, so I felt it. And now I can integrate those two pieces. So the next time that I do it again, I'm going to be coming from an embodied place that I have this layer of wisdom that I didn't have before. So I
Mm.
always love to share this example of when I was playing laser tag with my daughter, my husband, and one of her friends. We like every weekend we'll kind of pick an activity and we rotate between the three of us of like what we'll do for family connection time. And I hadn't played laser tag since I was like in 5th grade at like Qzar laser tag or something. And so there's two sides of the room that you go into, as far as like the teams that you're on. So one side were all the like young boys who like have memberships and play laser tag all the time. And then the other side, our team, were all the like parents bringing their daughters and their toddler kid into the mix. Like we were like the misfits and like, what are we doing? And the guy is explaining the rules to us, right? So there's like an educational video, put your packs on, this is how you score, this is how you win. And we were just like, okay. And then when we got in there, we were so confused and we were just getting, our home base was getting shot up. Everyone was like losing, like we were just like vibrating the whole time. Yes. We did not win. And so we came out and we're like, and the boys were all excited, like, yeah. Yes. And then you take a little break. And during that break, like my husband, my daughter, and her friend, we go outside. I was like, all right, guys, we need to strategize. And like, so what we need to do is like, we have to protect the home base. Okay. And like, some of us are going to have to take one for the team and get shot to protect the shooter that's going to shoot their home base. So it's like, we had this new layer of knowledge that we didn't have before. And so we go back in for round 2, same thing, like all the boys that know how to play laser tag on one side, all the misfit parents with their toddler kids and girls and all that, whatever. So we put our packs back on, but now we have a game plan because we've actually lived it. We go back in and like we are on a mission and we've got like all these people swarming around the shooter, like protect the shooter, just let them keep shooting the home base, all of this. And we're just getting the people, we're hiding, we're refueling our laser tag. And then we get out, we look at the score and we won. And so to me, that is the example of like those 3 layers of learning where we're being educated and then we're experiencing it and we have the education, like we kind of learned it, but we don't quite get it because we never felt it. And then we come back in and we do it again, but now we have the education and we have the experience. So now we're coming from an embodied place and how we show up and do our work.
I love that. I feel like you just took me through a movie, first of all. So that was wonderful. And I just love this idea that learning is much more than kind of the instruction manual or the one time you read it in your book in school, that it really is this idea of really allowing the depth of learning to sink itself deeper and deeper the more you can. So thank you so much for sharing that. I am so grateful for your time today. And I am just so excited for my wonderful network of human beings that are giving us the time and energy to listen to this. I've now been exposed to the amazing love that you put out into the world. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. And if anyone is interested in just having more conversations, I'm happy to have more people listening to the Lead with Love podcast.
Yes. We'll have links to all of your things in the show notes too. So definitely listeners, head on over there. There's going to be links to all of the amazing things that Jadah's doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
So don't you feel like you just went through a coaching session with her? I mean, how many quotes did you write down? I wrote down like 50 when I listened to that back. She is such an incredible force, such an incredible human. You can feel the love and care she puts in everything she does, and the words she chooses, and the work she's putting out in the world, and the encouragement that she just puts out just by creating spaces where everybody belongs. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode as much as I did, and definitely go check out more about Jadah. And don't forget to head on over to the show notes page. It's on nikkyinnocent.com/podcast. You'll see Jadah's beautiful face there. If you want to go directly to the link, it's nikkyinnocent.com/podcast/Jadah Sellner. So you should be able to find it over there. So excited that you joined us for the entirety of this episode, and I am equally as excited for you to stick around for our next episode that's coming up. I think you'll be pretty excited about the guest. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.